that I would give him the benefit of the doubt and, I can change him.
Ooh.
I thought I could change him. I thought I could be the woman that he needed, and that he's going to change for me.
Welcome to Love Stories, a relationship podcast for successful women, where we talk about love, dating, relationships, and how great love stories are made. Whether you're searching for the one, you're madly in love, or simply curious about romantic relationships, this podcast is for you. I'm Charlene Byars. Each week, you'll hear from women, couples, and experts, and all the ins and outs on how to create your own love story. I am so passionate about this subject, and I'm so excited to share all the things that you can apply to create a beautiful love story of your own. Cheers to great love. Welcome back to the Love Stories Podcast. I'm your host, Charlene Byars. Well, it's another new week, and I was thinking about you, and actually I hope that you're doing really well, and I hope that you're really paying attention to your mindset, your thoughts, and what energy you're putting out into the world. Because if you're single and you're looking to attract a perfect match for you, your future husband, here are some things worth paying attention to. Your faith. Keep praying and believing that the right man is absolutely out there for you, that he will come and you will find the right guy for you. It's also important that you work on your mindset and know that there are amazing men out there. And forgive yourself for the mistakes and all the men who hurt you. Keep your heart open. Your past is not your future. Keep praying to God. Keep praying for patience, that he will help you become the dream woman that will attract your dream man. And journal, definitely, and work out your inner healing. Make a list of what your future husband looks like, what your marriage is going to be like, and the impact that you two are going to have as a couple. And very importantly, go on regular dates. Go out with different men and put yourself out there. Keep your standards super high. And no matter what you do, be kind to yourself. Say nice things to yourself, about yourself, and believe that the right man wants to be with you and is looking for a woman just like you. Let's talk about the tip of the week, which is learn the questions to ask yourself to know if he's the right person for you. Okay, here's some questions that I want you to ask yourself. Do you have the same meaningful life goals? And I don't mean, like, for an example, that you both want children. No, I mean, what values do you both want to give your children? And I don't mean like, what is our house going to look like? Instead, what does it feel like in your home? Here's another one that you should ask yourself. Are you attracted to each other? This is very, very important part of marriage. It's supposed to be getting stronger in marriage and not weaker, because the more knowledge, the more love, and the more desire happens with each other, then the more attraction you have for one another. Last but not least, what a man needs and what a woman needs are two different things in the matters of the heart. So pay attention to what you need and what your man needs. A question that I would ask a woman is this: do you respect him? Because it is very, very important. It's a big deal for a man if his wife respects him. A question that I would ask a man is, would you be happy making her happy for the rest of your life? Because every man needs a job, a purpose, and that's a man's job in a marriage. What does a woman need? A woman needs to be loved. A man wants to be loved, but he needs to be respected. A woman wants to be respected, but she needs to be loved. I am so thrilled to welcome my next guest on the show today, Felicia Romero. Felicia Romero is a fitness entrepreneur, podcast host, speaker, and mentor to fitness coaches. Felicia went to Arizona State where she played softball. She also has her master's degree in exercise and wellness from ASU. She's an 8-time fitness cover model, including Oxygen Magazine, Muscle and Fitness, Hers, and Flex Magazine. She opened up her first gym at the age of 22 years old, and over the years, she has built and ran her gyms until 2 years ago, when she sold Fit Method to create more time freedom in her life and build her online business to help people all around the nation. She has been on reality TV, local and national TV, and with her most recently reality TV experience on Fit to Fat to Fit, that aired on Lifetime, where she had to gain and lose weight for her sister, who lost over 80 pounds in the process. She's also a regular on Fox 10 News, Arizona Family, CBS, and NBC. Today, Felicia mentors entrepreneurs and fitness coaches, helping them build their brand and business online through her program called The Wealthy Wellness Coach, and host of the Hi Felicia podcast with over 500K downloads. One of my takeaways from this amazing conversation that I had with Felicia was that as a successful entrepreneur and businesswoman who had been able to build an empire of success, she realized even though she had been able to create that in her life, she also realized that there was some inner work, some inner healing that she needed to do. After experiencing a toxic relationship that changed her, she knew that she never wanted to experience that again. She looked inwards and did the work and healed things from her past and started shifting her mindset, the people that she surrounded herself with, and went on a deep spiritual journey. And that led her to eventually meeting up again with her high school sweetheart. From the beginning, he was always her soulmate, but back then it wasn't their time. And when he showed up again, it was because Felicia was ready and she did the inner work. Wow. With no further ado, Felicia Romero.
Well, hello, Felicia. Yay, you're here.
I am here.
Oh, how exciting. No, seriously, how exciting. I've been really looking forward to this interview.
Yeah.
For so many reasons. And, when we created this podcast, I knew that I wanted to have a platform and a space that women can celebrate love, relationships. And I knew that when I thought about that, and especially, women that are high achieving, women that are, go-getters, knowing that in life, the truth is that we actually can have both. We can have great success and we can have great love. But a lot of people don't think it's possible. But I knew with you, and I know everybody's like, oh, where are we going here? And I knew with you, no pressure, but I knew with you, your story, and we had a little bit of a pre-interview, was so inspiring. How, you've been able to be, a very successful woman, but also find love and find your perfect match.
Yeah.
So before we go anywhere, I'm going to take you back.
Yes.
I'm going to take you back. When you grew up and you used to think about, your future, and you used to think about relationships and love. What was it that you truly were thinking in the sense of did you want to get married? Did you you were thinking more no, I want to have this career? What was your mindset back in the day?
Well, I haven't grown up yet. I just want to say that. I'm still a big kid. I honestly don't feel like an adult. And it's so weird because I do adulting things, my fiance and I, we invest in properties and we built our dream home and we do all the things. But I don't feel like I've grown up. I'm a big kid.
You're a big kid.
I'm a big kid. Yes.
Okay.
But back in the day, quote unquote, I would say, I grew up in a single mom household.
Oh, you did?
So I didn't have an example of a mother and father that are completely devoted to each other, and they now have been married for 25, 30 years. I didn't have that example. My example in a really young age was watching my mom, who was a single mom, try to provide for her 2 girls and go through a really, really hard situation.
Okay.
And being 8, 9, 10 years old, even though a parent tries to shelter the child and tries to like keep me away from certain things. Kids know.
Yes.
They know what's going on. And so from a really early age, I had to grow up really fast.
Okay.
I had to help raise my little sister when my mom was, working 2 to 3 jobs. And so I think from a really young age, my viewpoint of marriage and what partnership was really affected, So I didn't grow up thinking like, oh my gosh, I want to have this, picturesque wedding and I want my dad to walk me down the aisle and I want to have like these many kids. It was never really depicted for me. It was never really like a thought that I had, not to say that it's not admirable to want that.
Yeah, it wasn't your environment.
It just wasn't my environment.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that led to many years of awful relationships. And unfortunately, like a lot of issues that I've had to kind of heal through what my dad had done and abandonment and really finding my way, which I didn't find until later in life. Until my 30s.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
So first of all, where did you grow up? And give me, so you already said you grew up with a single mom.
Yes.
Was your dad first of all, where did you grow up and how many siblings did you have, you said?
I have 2 younger sisters, but I have my middle sisters from same mom and dad. And then my youngest sister is with my stepdad.
With your stepdad?
Yes.
Okay, so from early age, was your dad ever in the picture living with your mom or you don't really remember that?
Yeah, up until 8, which is really bizarre because I feel like kids, you can remember things before 8, 6, 7, 8 are pretty pivotal years. I don't remember my dad even being in the picture.
You don't.
And part of that, I feel like there was a lot of trauma. And I think I just sort of blocked it out. I just remember the bad, which is unfortunate because I do feel like sometimes, and you see this in the news, you see this in things that happen, and sometimes the negative just tends to stick with you more than the positive, unfortunately. And for me, that was the case.
No, that makes total sense because, a lot of us, I interview a lot of women. Yeah. And it's either one or the other. So it's either women that, have, grown up and they would say they grew up in a really healthy, loving environment. But it's interesting. They still have had their own, setbacks or trials with men not working. And then I have women, and, me included, that grew up in an environment that wasn't like that. Like I didn't see, a healthy relationship either. I didn't see 2 people, really love each other, a man and a woman, the whole thing. I didn't see any of that. So I remember myself too, based on how I grew up, it really did affect me on how I looked at relationships.
Yeah. I mean,
it does because you're in a different mode. You're like more of a survivor mode, right?
100%. I actually went into survival mode when I was 8. And that didn't actually come about. Like I didn't realize that until later in life when I got when things started failing, like my thyroid started to fail. I was in that like fight or flight state again in a relationship where things were triggered from past trauma and everything shut down and my health started suffering. And so that was when I went on my healing journey. And this was like my late 20s. And it wasn't until then when I had seen a massage therapist who was an intuitive. And as she was working on my body, she knew nothing about me. She stopped on my throat and she said, "Oh, wow, you've been in survival mode since you were 8. Wow. And I thought that was so fascinating because that was the year that my parents had gone through some really tough situation. And, I've talked about it on my podcast as well, some of the things that my mom went through that I unfortunately witnessed. But, kind of going into that fight or flight, you don't realize it because when you are in survival mode or when you're in that, like, what is that sympathetic state? You don't realize it, and you just get sort of used to it. It was just my normal.
It was your normal.
It was my norm.
Yeah, because that's what you knew.
That's all I knew.
Yeah.
Right. And so now that's not to say that my whole life has been fight or flight or survival. No. But there were moments, and this tends to happen in relationships for me, where anytime I saw a red flag, I was out, and I would literally start from ground zero. Like I never actually knew how to work on a relationship. And also it takes 2 to tango. So you mentioned like, a lot of the women that you speak to, they have their own set of setbacks or obstacles, whether you've had the parent in the household or whether you didn't, because you're dealing with 2 people.
Yes.
You don't know what the man has gone through. Right. And so like, for a lot of people, it's work, and it's a lot of work on ourselves and healing. And the more that you can really work on your emotional intelligence and your consciousness of just understanding and being aware of people around you, I do believe the healthier you're going to be, not only with yourself, but with the people that you attract. And
absolutely.
We were just talking about energy earlier. Energy is everything.
It's energy.
And I know we're going to talk about my current relationship in a bit, but I will say that in my 20s up until my early 30s, I was attracting a certain type of person that the person that I am today at 42, that person would not even be in my aura.
Right.
Would not even be in my general energy because I'm emitting a different energy.
Right.
And so there is something to be said with that.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Because you even said, though, when you had this realization. So I'm going to take you a little more back again.
Yeah.
So you had this realization when you're about 20 years old.
Mm-hmm.
You know, someone said something to you like, hey, you've been in this survival mode. So let's take you back before 20 years old.
Mm-hmm.
What was it like with you when you decided to go out and start dating?
Mm-hmm.
What were you noticing? What kind of men were you attracting? What kind of relationships were you having?
Well, before 20, I only had one relationship. Okay. He's actually my current relationship.
No.
He was my high school sweetheart.
No. Wow.
Yeah. So his name's Keith. And so he was my high school sweetheart.
Okay.
We started dating when I was 16.
Okay.
And we were together up until I was 20 when I went to college, went to Arizona State. And if I were to characterize him, I mean, he's completely different than he was back then.
Yeah.
Not completely. I mean, there's traits and characteristics about him that I still really love that I remember from back then. But he was very kind, timid, shy, very hardworking, makes his own money, and very very headstrong, very successful. Even at 16, 17, 18, he bought his first car on his own.
Oh, he did?
You
So
know?
he was from the get-go.
So his parents did not help him out. He grew up in a trailer park. He was just very, very headstrong, very intelligent, very kind and timid and shy.
Go-getter, seems
go-getter.
like. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, and that was my first boyfriend.
So what? Okay, so how old were you when you met him?
I was 16.
So you guys
he was 17.
Okay, so you're 16, he's 17. And how long were you guys boyfriend, girlfriend?
For 4 years.
For 4 years.
Up until I went to college, essentially.
Okay, so what happened?
Honestly, we're kids.
Yeah.
We just grew apart. I went on to play softball for Arizona State. And I was and I didn't live on campus because I'm very much introvert homebody. So I loved living at home. But I was very much into the college life and we just grew apart. You know, we were kids. Nothing dramatic happened. Nothing was like, oh, he cheated on me or I cheated. It was none of that. It was literally just two kids who are now in college that just drifted apart.
Okay.
Yeah.
So drifted apart. So you had, so from 16 years old to about 20 years old, you had this really nice experience.
He went on all the family trips.
He went on the family trips. Everything was cool. And then you're like, okay, but now I'm going to college. I'm going to go figure this out. So it really had nothing to do with the guy. It just had to do with you.
Just me.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Honestly, just me. And I was so hyper-focused on school and sports that I remember just not wanting to be in a relationship.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, and honestly, it's not like I went out and dated. I think I went in and actually jumped into a relationship 6 months later.
Why did we do that?
I know. And I was with that person for 8 years.
Get out of here.
So I've always been a longer term kind of gal.
Yeah, okay.
Although, and I highly recommend this if you have it, but and this is why I think there's so many divorces now. Okay. If this is my hot take, my opinion.
Okay,
it's
what's
not
your opinion, Mama?
It's not the right or wrong.
Okay, yeah.
But I feel like women who get married really young or are in a relationship really young, and then, I mean, divorce rates are so high.
Yes.
They're getting divorced in their 30s. Most of the people I know who got married in their 20s now, friends of mine, are all divorced.
Yeah.
And it doesn't give you a chance to really, experience life, experience different people. And I will say, because, I went through those relationships and then there was a year where I was like, I'm just going to be a serial dater. I'm just going to date men. I'm going to have fun. And, I call that quote unquote my hoe year. Sorry, not sorry. But I think every woman needs a year.
A year. Is this after? Okay. So this was time was after the 8 years?
Yes. I was probably 31.
Okay,
30,
about 31.
31.
Okay, but let me ask you this. So when you were in this relationship, okay, so you tell me how I love this. Okay. So you grew up, and like you said, you grew up in an environment, that you just saw basically your mom do the best she can, but there wasn't really, this love affair that you saw and witnessed. Got it. Okay. Yeah. Then you go and you meet this great guy when you're 16 years old, but you're young and you're not sure. And
I will say my stepdad was in my life.
Oh, your stepdad
I have an amazing stepfather.
Oh, let's talk about him.
He came into the picture when I was 12.
Okay, let's talk about him.
And he is hands down my dad.
Okay.
Like he has never missed a graduation, never missed a game. So like I've had examples of men and he would be that. And my mom and my stepdad are still together 25, almost 30 years later, however long it is. I don't know. Fast math.
Yeah.
But like they've been together a long time.
Okay.
And he's wonderful. I've never seen them fight. Like he still rubs her feet every night. He cooks for her. Like they have a great relationship.
Okay.
So I've seen
So you saw it. So you're like,
it was
okay,
just
so it's possible.
that pivotal age of 8,
Yes.
9, 10, when things are
Yes.
being shaped in your
Yes.
life and your worldview, that really had a big effect on me.
Yeah, it's your nervous system. It really does. You know, like I work with a lot of, we talk about like, I don't know if you know the term, feminine embodiment. And I am a feminine embodiment practitioner because I help women in the sense of really their nervous system.
Right.
And how stuff really gets stuck. It's like frozen tension in our body. So a lot of times we have to be able to release that. And that really follows us. And that starts getting implanted in us literally from birth to about 7, 8 years old and on.
Right.
And on, depending on like what we've gone through. So that says a lot about a lot of the ways that we feel, a lot of the ways that we do things has a lot to do with our little nervous system that got, started when we were very young. So a lot of those early memories that we don't really remember, our body remembers.
Our bodies,
Absolutely. And our bodies are right there. Okay, so let's take this back. Okay, so you had this experience and you were able at one point to see a really healthy relationship where the man is respecting the woman is respecting men. So that to you, was that kind of like when you look back, okay, that's what I want? Or you didn't really think about it then?
You know what? I honestly did not even think about it. And if I'm being honest, I was never in this place where I'm like, I have to be in a relationship to feel a certain way about myself. I have always been super independent.
Okay.
I opened up my first business when I was 22 years old. And from the age of 22 to 35, I owned gyms and ran gyms. So I secured, hundreds of thousands of dollars in investor money. I've done all the things. And
You've
throughout
been going. Like, yeah.
And throughout that time, I was never like, oh my gosh, I have to be in a relationship. Now, don't get me wrong. Like I've had a lot to heal and I have been in terrible relationships and I've also been in really good relationships. And so I think that was just my journey.
Okay.
That was just my journey. And but I was never like, oh gosh, I really admire that relationship. I wish I had that. But you know what? I've been in a relationship for 7, almost 8 years.
Yeah.
So maybe I did feel that back then, but I've been in a relationship now for so long that I could have forgotten. But I don't feel like I was in this like space where I was always looking. For me, it was more like the women in entrepreneurship.
Okay.
It was like, oh my gosh, this
that
woman,
was more like
she started this thing that is so amazing. I want to do that too. Or, oh my gosh, I want to compete and I want to be the best and I want to do all of these things. And, and I will say like throughout that time, like especially my 20s and 30s, I was competing, like figure competitor on really big stages. I was a pro fairly quickly. Competing, for those listeners, for the
what were you
listener,
competing?
For the listener that may not know what this is, I was an IFBB figure pro.
Oh, I know what that is. Yeah, so explain what that is a little bit.
So I basically a beauty pageant with muscle.
Yep.
And I competed on the biggest stage that you can ever compete on, the Super Bowl of what I did, the Olympia. And I was a pro for almost 9 years.
Wow,
and so
that's busy, girlfriend. That is like
that takes up a lot of your time.
Yes.
And I will say it's a very selfish sport because you have to spend so much time consumed with what you're eating, how you're working out, and how you look. And so that's a whole nother ballgame. That's a whole nother podcast on body dysmorphia and extreme that I will not ever do again.
But that was
where my
you were in. Yeah, that's where you were.
That was where I was.
So really when it came to relationships and finding your partner, your life partner, getting married, all those things, that just wasn't where you were at the time.
It wasn't. Okay. No, but I was in relationships. So like during that time I was in relationships with trainers, men who like were already in the industry that I was in because it was easy and that's how I would see them. But during that time I was competing. I was on, modeling and getting on covers of magazines. I also did like a lot of reality TV during that time. So relationships wasn't like a big, like I have to get married at this time and I have to have kids at this time. It just wasn't like at the forefront of importance to me.
Yeah. You had you were just on a different path.
Yeah.
Yeah. But was there still something in you? Did you ever think about like, or maybe you didn't, like, did you ever think about, no, but eventually I do want to get married? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. I just knew at that time, and it came very clear to me. And I want to say this with a grain of salt, especially for women out there that seem to attract the wrong person.
Yes.
And like, why do I keep, dating these men? And so it really, we have to start looking at ourselves.
Yes.
And what I realized is like, oh, wow, it was me that needed to change. And I was attracting these men that were not committing, that were abusive, that were controlling, or that cheated on me. I've had that as well. And it was because of, and again, I'm not taking the blame. Like, they should not treat people this way.
No.
But
this
I
is
was
good.
attracting those types of men because
Yes.
of who I was being, and honestly, my own self-worth.
Yeah.
Right. So I had a lot of work to do. And it wasn't until I finally healed myself and I really got aware of like these things that I was doing to myself and the people that I was attracting. It was then that I was like, oh, wow, real love is possible.
Okay.
And that is when Keith came back in my life. And, it was just, it was like this whole healing journey that I had to go through to understand my self-worth. And like, because I think at the end of the day, if I'm were to like take it back,
Okay.
I probably did not feel worthy enough to marry. I probably did not have my own self-worth. Like, who am I? Who's going to want to marry me? Like, and maybe that's why I didn't put that much importance on it, because I didn't have like huge self-worth, even though I was on covers of magazines.
And you were like going,
I was going,
yeah,
and
busy.
I sought accomplishments
Yeah.
to feel validated.
Yeah.
That's why I kept going.
Yeah.
I needed the medal. I needed the people to tell me, Felicia, you're doing so well. I needed to be on the cover, like, oh my gosh, look at Felicia. But I remember still feeling not completely satisfied.
Not completely satisfied. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense in the sense of like maybe that I wasn't in that space because I wasn't good with myself yet.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yet.
So when you were so you had your boyfriend, for the 4 years, and then you went off, and then you just went and did career, boyfriends, all the things. Did you ever reflect back on him? Or was on
Keith, the current one?
Yes. Were you like, or was it kind of like at the time a little bit of out of sight, out of mind?
It was 17 years apart.
Okay.
Definitely out of sight, out of mind. But what's really weird is deep down inside, and I'm one that loves to I trust my intuition.
Okay.
I always knew that I was going to be with someone that I already knew.
You did?
Yes.
Okay.
That was already in my life.
Okay.
Like, I always intuitively knew that.
So there's something
There was
in there.
something
You're
in
like,
there.
I don't know when or how.
Yes.
But it's going to be someone that.
Yes.
Okay.
That I knew, like, from a previous life, like, and we have a soul karmic connection, 100%. And when I say that, I say it like because there is this familiarity between us that just is undeniable. And there's a reason why we came back in each other's lives. And I have a really crazy story, whether you believe in like intuitives or not. And when I say intuitives, like count like psychics, intuitives.
Yes.
I have a spiritual counselor. I did for years, not as much anymore. But I remember her telling me, and this is when I owned my last gym.
Okay.
And this is after.
But hold on, when you owned your last gym, before you tell the story, were you in a relationship?
I was single.
Okay, so
and
now
I was
you're single.
I had been
was
single.
that your year that you just told me that you went a little crazy?
No.
Okay.
That was like a long time ago. So that was like, so I'd always been on a long-term commitment girly.
Right.
And so the year where I was like, I'm just going to go on a dating website. I'm just going to go on dates, a lot of first dates. And that was a year, that was like when I was like 30. So Keith came back in my life at 35.
Okay.
And I had been single for like 4 years.
Okay, so now you've been single for 4 years.
A long time. Where I finally came to the realization where I was like, like he may come, he may not. I opened up my last gym. And I was perfectly content and happy with my life. I wasn't searching for anything. I was just really like married to my business.
Okay.
And I had healed a lot.
You did.
I had done a ton of work, ton of counseling.
So you had a different piece to yourself.
Different piece.
Okay.
Just a very content, like an inner peace that I was just an energy, like I was a completely different person. And so like, if you were to meet me, I was actually going to do a post today, like people who meet me now or who knew me back then, they are seeing a completely different version of me right now. Like I'm a different Felicia. So
okay, well, hold on, Felicia. Before you tell me you're a different Felicia, what do you think it was that you did that you were able to like truly like just become a different version of yourself? What were you doing in those 4 years?
Oh gosh. I mean, personal development is huge.
Yeah.
And who you surround yourself with.
Yep.
When I started like going to women's events, I started attracting different types of friends and women.
Nice.
People that were, you know, like the old Felicia, the old friends. We talked about our bodies, what we look like, gossip. The new Felicia, we talked about our big goals, our big dreams, a lot of personal development, a lot of different modalities, like spiritual type modalities like breath work and retreats, transformational retreats.
You really took those years to find yourself.
Yeah.
Like find yourself, clear yourself,
Yeah.
heal yourself. Because you know, we always hear, like, you'll hear women like always like, do the work.
Yeah.
Do the work. They're like, what is the work?
Yeah.
What is the work?
It's not one thing.
It's not one thing. Okay, good.
It's a compound effect.
Yes.
It's a compound effect
Talk
of
about
different
that.
things. And it's your habits. It's what you're consuming. It's what
Yes.
you're, and not just eating, like actually physically eating, but like what you're listening to, what you're reading, how you spend your time. Like all of that started to change for me.
Yeah.
And it really started with like focusing on different things because my focus was my body for so long. And when I had gone through a lot of like stuff with my body dysmorphia, I was disordered eating, I had health issues. It was a big wake up call that there is more to life than this. I want to be healthy, but I don't want to be obsessed with it.
Obsessed.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want
and yes, absolutely. And so, that was a big wake up call. And so when I started shedding all of those old layers of myself, those limiting beliefs, the bad thoughts, the friends, the relationships, I was able to come into who I am now. But it was a compound effect through time, through my daily habits, through the thoughts, like I said, through what I was eating and consuming and thinking about. And then this new group of people came through, new friends, and the relationship with Keith, and like my energy just shifted. Everything shifted. The amount of money that I was making shifted.
Everything.
The businesses, like just everything. Yeah. Yeah.
See, that's a little goosies here. That's what I'm talking about, because I truly believe, like, however we grew up and however we were at a certain time in our lives, like, that can shift if we want it to shift. Like, 100%. I don't believe like someone is just, that's who they are. I don't believe in that. Like, I believe that people decide where they want to be, you know, like if you are a person, because I interview people that are like in their 70s, let's say for an example, and they will literally say to me, you know, throughout my journey, I realized age wasn't the thing. It was me deciding to do the work and really look inwards and really deciding I don't have to stay stuck how I was before. But there's people that, like, you know, are at a certain age, like they're kind of pretty much the same person because they decided not to do the changes. And when we're thinking about love and we're thinking about relationships, I truly believe that, like, how we actually show up is what we're going to attract, right? Like how we think about relationships, what we think is possible or not possible, and how we show up is what we're going to attract. And if we're a woman that has been attracting, let's say, not the most healthiest relationships, or like you said earlier, like, you know, men that weren't really upfront, men that were liars, cheaters, all the things. It does have a lot to do with, like, okay, why first of all were we allowing that? And where were we at in our lives that we thought that was okay?
Well, I mean, if we're just being honest, right? Like, I think women, like, we have to be honest with ourselves, right? So if you're continuing to just like give your energy to any man that's showing up in your DMs and like think, oh my gosh, this person really likes me. Like, oh, we have to like take a step back, right? We have to take and not to say that, oh, maybe meet this person, get to know them, but like we have to really kind of look past because there's so many red flags. And I think because I am older and I've been through a lot of the stuff, quote unquote. I can see the red flags from a mile away, but unfortunately, you know, women that are really desperate for love or are quote unquote looking for it, I feel sometimes it opens them up to these vulnerabilities, these red flags that may happen. And social media is a prime example of it. You know, think of, I mean, maybe you're a single woman right now and you're chatting to 5 or 6 different men in your DMs, right? And you think that all of them are, you might think that they are speaking only to you.
Right.
But they're probably not.
Probably not.
They're probably speaking to other girls as well, right? So sometimes the standards have to change a little bit, and who you give access to also has to shift, right?
Yes. It has to shift, because if you are looking for you know, like someone that is your true alignment, you know, and I love, this is what I want people to hear this. It really does matter on like, if you understand, okay, actually, how do I want to feel with a man? You know what I mean? Like, how do I really want to feel? What are my actual goals and values? It's not just, you know, I tell women, I said, listen, even if he's hot, I know you're like, oh, but he's so hot. I know. But even if he's hot, if the guy is not on the same page as you, you know, like if you know, okay, listen, I'm a woman that definitely wants to get married and I want to find my soulmate and really, I don't have time to waste. Like, I'm not going to waste my time on the wishy-washy men. Yeah. You have to really understand and be clear with yourself. Yeah. And not settle for anything else. Yeah. That's the shift here. That's for sure. That's the work. That's for sure. For sure. It seems like with you. Yeah. You were on this 4-year, you know, journey of like kind of like doing what we just talked about. Like we're talking about doing the work. There was different things that you did and you started changing. Yeah. You started shifting. You started looking at things in a different way. And you had your now set of like probably values and things that you're like, okay, if I was going to have a man, this is what I'm looking for. 100%. Okay. Yeah. So now you shift. And then what happens with this Keith? Oh, what happened? So now you're in this 4-year, you know, okay, I'm changing. I'm not attracting, you know, these guys that I was attracting to before. Yeah. But let me ask you this.
And I wouldn't even give them the time of day.
And I wouldn't even give them the time of day.
And the reason why I bring up like the girls in the DMs, and I don't want to judge anyone here if you're doing that, but I have a personal story with that. Okay, you know, like I was dating a guy and this was years before Keith. This was like in 2000. So Keith came back in my life in 2017. Okay. So this was back in like 2009, 2010. And literally, and again, listener, if you relate to this story, I'm sure there's many women who can relate to this story, but like there was a man that came into my life through my social media, but he was following me because I was a competitor and I had just turned pro and he was a trainer. So this is so he's kind of like more. This is the relationship that I had with a trainer. Okay. And, you know, we started, you know, he's like, hey, I would love to like start training you. And I, you know, deep down inside intuitively, I knew he had other intentions, but I'm like, oh, let me just see. Oh, honey, he had other intentions. Are you kidding me? Look at you. Like, let me meet him. I'll let him train me. Of course, it ended up turning into a relationship. But there are so many people who tried to warn me about this person. Okay. They like people would like, Felicia, like, this guy, he's done this to this girl and he cheated on this girl and this is his character and this is who he is. That's not what I was seeing, but that's what others were telling me. And again, you know, if everyone around you, and again, I was the kind of girl back then, hadn't done the healing yet. Okay, I would attract basically men like my dad. Yep. That I would give him the benefit of the doubt and, oh, I can change him. Ooh, I thought I could change him. I thought I could be the woman that he needed and that like, oh, he's going to change for me. And I, you know, all of these people who are warning me like, oh, that's how he used to be, but that's not what he's showing to me. And he was like a wolf in sheep's clothing. Got it. Right. And so we were only together for about 2 years when, found out that he was cheating on me with many people. And it was like literally one of those rock bottom moments for me because it was a very like, you know, especially if you've ever been with a man or if you are a woman who shines really, really bright and you that tend to then attract. And I don't say this word lightly. I've done a ton of research on it, but he was a narcissist. And this type of man, this type of person or woman, he like hunted me. He was a predator. Yep. He wanted my light. They're master manipulators. Yeah. And by the time he was done with me, I felt like this big and my light was so dimmed that I had to find it again. Yes. You know, and I say that and so that's why I'm like, women, like, you know, you know, at the end of the day. Because you said so, especially like, if you're in a relationship right now, or if you're in the dating world, you're kind of like you know deep down inside if they are good or not. Yeah. Right. So Did you? So even though everyone was telling you, and you were like, and you were kind of like, oh, you know, he can change or whatever, but you still kind of went through it. But deep down, you did feel something. You felt. Yeah. Okay. I mean, so you ignored that. You ignored that. Just ignoring that. Okay. Yeah. Like. You know, only really wanted to meet like or train late at night. Like it was very weird, you know, very weird with his phone, very secretive. yeah. Like, and I was a crazy person when I was with this person. Like the things I was doing in this relationship, I would never do now. And I tell Keith, I'm like, I know Keith would never cheat on me. I know there would be no infidelity, but I'm like, Keith, if this were to happen, like, just know I walk away.
Yeah.
Like, but I remember how I was in that relationship. I was like, on a witch hunt. Like, I need to find out everything. And so, like, I would never do that now. My worth is so much different now. But, like, that was the kind of person I was back then.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but I had to go through that. I don't regret it. But I had to go through that because now I get to learn from that. I don't teach on relationships, but like understanding the red flags, understanding your own self-worth and really finding your power, picking yourself up from the ashes and like rising like the phoenix, and that's what I had to do is like find that strength.
Yes.
Find that strength.
Yeah,
and
you have to go there.
Yeah. And sometimes we have to have those experiences.
Yep.
I think about this quite a bit. I'm such a curious person. I think about, like, why did this happen? And why did I go through this? And what did this do for me? And what did I learn from it? And I often ponder on these things. And so, like, for me, I think my life journey, because I do believe in your soul living many lives, right? This is why I believe Keith and I have a karmic connection. For whatever reason, that person who did that to me, that relationship, that was my karmic, whatever it may be. And I had to learn from that again. But, I often think about this and I think like for me in this lifetime, my biggest lesson has been relationships, which is why I'm so happy to be talking to you about it because it's not something I talk about very much. I talk mainly about like business and wellness and all the things.
But don't you feel like for me, this is what I do.
Yeah.
But I feel like relationships truly shapes everything.
For sure.
Because, and I'm not just talking about, I work on, romantic relationships, but I'm not just talking about romantic relationships. I believe our friendships, the relationships
female
we
friendships
have,
are huge.
all of it. It matters. Like it matters when you have a solid relationship and it totally changes the game when you don't.
Yeah.
When you don't, when there's not, and female friendships, everything. So I'm all about relationships because I know they just shape so much. They just shape so much in us.
Yeah.
So when you went through that experience, okay, and you were able to like, I always say, come out of it, right? You came out of that. Did you feel then that's when you were like, okay, something has to shift in me? Like was that your moment? Like you're like, okay, this broke me.
Yeah.
I'm not doing this again.
Yeah.
And was that an opportunity to really realize what it was that you were actually looking for?
It wasn't after that one. I was broken and I knew I was broken. I knew I had some things I needed to work on. Yeah. I went through that year after that of just dating people.
Okay.
And it wasn't until that year of just dating people that I was like, I don't want to give my energy my energy's precious. And that's where I started really like reflecting on what I was doing and my decisions. And that's where I was like, nope, I'm going to stop dating. I'm going to work on myself. I'm going to be married to my business and I'm going to work on me. And that's what I did. And so that was after that. So it was like probably around 32, end of 31, 32, all the way up to when Keith came back in my life when I was 35.
Okay. So so after that was a big pivotal moment for you with that relationship, right?
Oh,
like
it was. Yeah. It was one of those moments that like left a scar for sure. Like, and I don't really think about it too often now. I think it's now far enough away from me to where it doesn't touch me. Like it's like so far it's kind of like, if you can't, what was that? What's that quote? If you can't touch today, why are you letting it, or no, if you can't touch yesterday, why are you letting it touch you today? It's like, things that you've gone through of like the worry and like these things, like it's so far away from me now that it doesn't affect me. But it really, it was definitely a pivotal moment that left a big scar for sure.
Yeah. And, and I want women to hear this, and this is why I'm doing this, is because the majority of us, we have stories of relationships that were just those relationships that we can't believe that we were in it. Yeah. We can't believe, oh my goodness, I can't believe I put up with that. Like, who was I at that time? Yeah. And often, like when you go through that type of relationship, it really puts like this dark cloud thinking, okay, well, you know what? Maybe it's not in the cards for me. Maybe, maybe love is not available for me. I think what I'd love people to hear right now is It doesn't matter what type of relationship you've been in the past. It doesn't matter what has happened. Love is available. Yeah. If that's a desire that you have in your heart, love is available. And sometimes what happens is that you go through those, situations, but then you end up truly meeting the perfect match for you. So 100%. I don't want anyone to, so this is what I want to say. Don't ever give up, because that doesn't say anything in the sense of what is possible for the future. Yeah. Right? Because look at you've today have already been talking about like how you had this mindset of, you really didn't like think of like this great relationship. You wanted it, but that wasn't where you were at. And then when you had relationships, they weren't that great. And I know you said you had some good ones, but then you had relationships that weren't that great. Right. But that still didn't stop you. And another thing, ladies, and to me, when you're in your 30s, I truly believe as a 52-year-old woman, I believe that is so young. Like, I think I love it. I love it. Yeah. 40s, 30s, 50s, we're still so young.
I also want to say too, I remember this was like a couple months ago. Okay. I was at the salon, and this is going to be for those women who, because I even at that time when Keith came back in my life, I did not speak horribly about men. Like, I speak very highly of men. I love men. I love like the masculinity of them. Yes. I love the emotion. I love like the forearms. Like, I'm very much, I love men.
Yeah. I love men too.
But also too, I think women who've been through some stuff. Yes. And I've seen it on like social media, and sometimes I see it in like female friendships when they're talking about men. I think when you do omit this thought or these, the basically like energy of like men are dogs, or men are this, men are evil. For instance, I was at a salon a couple months ago, and I usually wear earbuds and I listen to some sort of Audible or podcast, and my earbuds died. And I was listening to the conversation to the women that were next to me, and like literally the whole time they were like bashing men. Yes. And then I remember at the end of the conversation, she's like, "Oh man, it's so frustrating because I can't find a good guy." And I was just like thinking, I didn't interject on their, I didn't interject on their talk. I didn't jump in because it's not my place. Yeah. But I was thinking to myself, I'm like, well, because your energy that you're putting out there is that men are this way. Men cheat. Men are dogs. Men are pigs. Men are narcissists. Men treat me bad. You're going to attract those men. Yes. So it's kind of like the law of attraction, right? So like what we focus on, we tend to attract. So like this is the first rule in manifestation. So like we don't focus on what you don't want. Right. Focus on what you want. Exactly. And so like, when it comes to your relationship, the more that you can, again, release expectation of what this person looks like or how much money they make, and just really lean into like, what are these core values that this person has, and really lean into like the goodness that you want in the relationship and what you want to experience in the relationship, it will come. Yes. It will. Yes. And so like Keith came this sounds so cliche, but like timing is everything. And if Keith would have come back in my life 2 years prior, I would not have been married or ready for him. Right. I would have not appreciated his kindness, appreciated his demeanor, like who he is. He's very like, and just to give you an example, Keith has no social media. So that's what I'm working with. Like he's not like taking pictures of his abs nothing wrong with that, men, if you do that. But that's just not what I wanted, because I've already experienced that. And I really, appreciated that he's like not on social media at all. Like he doesn't even really like, he doesn't understand it, and he just doesn't like he's not in that world. Yeah. And I love that about him.
You're like, that's cool.
That's
mine's
so
not
cool.
My husband's not on social media
love
too.
That about
but
him.
I always have him on mine.
Yeah, I know. I have him on mine too, but he just doesn't understand the scope. And so, I think, oftentimes, and so when he came back in my life, was not even expecting, not even like thinking anything of it. So back to my intuitive story. Okay, can I share that really quick?
The intuitive. Now I want to bring us back to something. I want to hear that. Okay. Yeah, back to the intuitive. Then we'll get back to how we
so this is like, not to say go out right now and see a psychic. Okay. Like, it's not what I'm saying at all. But I did have like a spiritual friend who told me, and she was like, Felicia, you've met your soulmate. He's been in your life before, and he actually went to your gym. I said, he went to my gym?
Yeah, cool.
I'm like, and this was in February, and Keith came back in my life in April. Okay, like January, February. Okay, she told me this, and I was like, what? And I remember like going through my members at
You
my
did?
studio
You
that I have. I'm like, who is this? I'm like,
who's the
no, it
guy?
can't be him. It can't be him.
No, yeah.
And I was like, wait, what? Like, he's been to the studio? Like, I don't know who this could be. Her name's Jane.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, yeah, he's been there. And he's, I see you with him. And I said, that's so weird. So months pass. April comes around and this woman joins the gym. Her name's Marie.
Okay.
And she is like, oh, and as I was signing up for the membership, she was like, oh, you used to date my cousin. I said, oh, who's your cousin? And she's like, Keith Price. And I was like, wait, what? I was like, oh my gosh, he's my high school sweetheart. That's so fun. What is he up to? And oh, he's a single dad and all these things. I was like, oh, that's so cool. Yeah. And so I think he was like, she was trying to secretly play matchmaker. And
she
like,
was.
Gosh, I should connect you two. I was like, cool. Okay. Like, didn't think anything
You're not thinking.
Of it.
You're not
no.
thinking. Okay.
Not thinking
okay.
like,
You're not
I'm going to date him.
Okay.
Like, I don't know what I don't know what he's up to.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know anything.
Okay.
And so she connects us and we start just a text chat. Nothing crazy. Like, hey, how are you doing?
Yeah.
How's your Wednesday? Oh, do you want to grab lunch on Friday? So we finally
Because you guys haven't talked in like since high school.
17 years.
17 years.
17 years.
Goodness. Oh my goodness.
So a couple weeks passed and I could tell like he was kind of nervous and didn't have the guts to like ask me to like a dinner. So I remember just like throwing it out there one night. It was like a Friday. I was at a girlfriend's house. She was having a barbecue and it was probably like 5 or 6 o'clock. And I texted him. I said, hey, I'm leaving a girl's barbecue. Do you want to meet up at like, and have like an early dinner somewhere?
Yeah.
And I had already eaten. I just wanted to see
you
him.
just want to see the guy.
And so he's like, okay. And so we meet at Postino's in downtown Gilbert. And again, just thinking that we were going to catch up.
Okay.
And we met at like 6:37 downtown Gilbert in April. And literally we closed the place down. Like we stayed there all night. From that moment, we were back together.
No.
Yes.
No.
And then 2 months later, we moved in together.
No.
Yeah. And that was 2017, so 7.5 years ago now. Yeah. And, but it was like, you just knew.
What was it, girlfriend? No, seriously.
It was
so people
everything.
are like, what, how did you know? How did you know?
So if I were to even, so it was, so obviously he's single.
Okay.
It's like, so I'm not going to like ruin a relationship. He was single dad. His son.
How old was his son at the time?
Almost 2.
Okay, almost 2.
Almost 2.
Okay.
He had been married previously, but for a very short time to Ryland's mom for like maybe, it was an annulment. So like a couple months they were married.
Okay.
And so he'd been basically a single dad for 2 years because Ryland was literally like 4 months old when they got divorced. And so he'd just been a single dad. And so like when we first got back together, when I saw him walk up, it was like all of the feelings again
like,
from high school.
Lordy.
And I was like, oh my gosh. And he smelled like what I remembered.
For real?
Yeah. And you know what? It wasn't until
what?
like a year after he's like, oh, I bought the cologne that I used to wear in high school.
No, he didn't.
Because I remember how much you loved it. Yeah.
Oh my
And he wore it.
Goodness.
And I was like, oh my God, what is that cologne? It was like pheromones or something. And so it was everything from his smile to our conversation to just, it was so familiar.
Mm-hmm.
You know how like, I'm sure you probably have this with your husband or if you're listening now, like with your partner, it's like you just feel close to him.
Yes.
Or him, her, whoever, you just feel a closeness.
Yes.
Like you want to touch them. You want to hug them. Nothing about you grosses you out about them. Like you're just so, like you just love them.
No, and you're like literally just sitting with your best friend.
Like I wanted to be with him. I wanted to touch him. I wanted to see him and smell him and like, oh my gosh, like this is such a familiar feeling. And this is why I truly believe in karmic soul connection. Mm-hmm. I truly do. And whether you've met this person before or if they're in your life for a reason, a season, or lifetime, you're going to have those people, right? And so since then we've been together ever since. And so fast forward to now, we built our dream home. We have tons of investment properties that we have bought together. We have built a life together, and it's been really amazing. And I would, again, timing is everything. I would not have appreciated him or even been ready for him if he had come back any sooner.
Yeah, you had to be, like you said earlier, you had to be at a certain place in your life to be able to accept what he came with. You know what I mean? Because you guys, like you said, if you met him even though you had had him in the high school, if you met him, years prior to this, you wouldn't have been ready.
Yeah. Oh, let me circle back to the intuitive. So I'm sure the listeners like, oh my gosh, what did the intuitive say?
Yeah.
So she was like, oh, he's been there before. And so when I was out to dinner with Keith that night, I said, oh, like I own a gym, called Fit Method in downtown in Gilbert. And he's like, oh, I've been there. I said, you have?
No.
He's like, yeah. One night you were teaching and I was outside in the parking lot of the gym that I where my gym was. There was a Zips in the parking lot.
Okay.
He said, oh, I was at Zips. I had a softball game and I saw the gym and I saw your name because my name was on the gym, Felicia Romero's Fit Method.
Okay.
And he said, I walked over and I looked in the mirror. It was like 7:00 at night. I was teaching the last class of the night.
Okay.
And he's like, I was looked in and you were teaching. And I didn't want to go in.
He remembered you.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, he went there. He saw it. He's
literally like, oh my God, this is my high school sweetheart.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So he had been to the gym.
So he has been at the gym?
Yeah.
So she was right.
She was right. Yeah.
Because you were thinking it was going to be someone like literally
like
in
a member.
The gym, as a member,
like a member or
like
someone. Yeah, I don't know.
But at this point, like I said, you were at such a different place in your life. Like it seemed like you were so open for this.
I was so open.
You were so open.
I was ready. I was open. I was also had no expectation of what I also knew like if it was going to happen, that would be awesome. And if it didn't, that would be okay too. Like I didn't put any sort of expectation or outcome of what this was going to be. I just let it happen organically. And he happened to feel the same way.
And he happened to.
And it was like, boom, we were back together.
It was like completely meant to be.
Yeah.
And
my
you know what
family
I love?
Loves him, by the way.
They love him.
Too.
You know what I love too? What you said earlier when you were talking about how we talk about, I want to circle back real quick on something. How women, and it's men too, but we're talking about women today, but how we talk about men and the expectations that we have on men. Because let me tell you what I've learned. What I've learned is the majority, ladies, listen to this. The majority of men out there are actually great.
Yeah.
They're great men out there.
I truly
and
believe
me
that.
as a mother of 4 boys and 1 girl, I have realized, and even though like I grew up not necessarily seeing healthy men. You know, I grew up not seeing like healthy guys. I kind of grew up seeing the opposite of that. Besides my father, who I adore, but my father, that's a whole other podcast. It's a whole other story too. But I think how we're going to talk about men and relationships, I love that you actually said that because I think it's so important, and I want women to really hear this. If you are, sitting there and you're bashing men, you got to understand, like when you think about men and women, we can't think that, all men, right? All men are jerks, because I always say, oh, goodness gracious. Yes, of course, we can have jerks, but guess what? We can have jerkettes. Yeah. It's like both sexes. It's both sexes, because there's some amazing women out there, and I think the majority are amazing too.
Same.
But there's some not so much.
Yeah.
Not so much.
Yeah.
So I think it is really important for us to be aware of like how we're talking and what it is that we truly believe.
Yeah.
Because if we really believe that there's no great men out there, there ain't going to be no great men.
Yeah, 100%. I also believe that sometimes we are different with certain people, right? So like I have such a fantastic relationship with Keith's ex, Ryland's mom, obviously because they have a child together. And I remember like early on, he had said some negative things about her. And I was like, wait. Like, I don't want to hear that. Yep. Number one. Number two, like that was so long ago. She could be a totally different person now. And I think I've also taught Keith a lot. And I think as women who tend to be a little bit more emotionally aware, that we can be an example for men and teach them about emotional intelligence and awareness. And so I just like brought that around, and I was like, you know what, maybe you brought something out different in her that she is not with her current partner, right? And that they're a match for each other. Right. And she just wasn't a match for you. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that we can think negatively about them or think, negatively about them no matter what they did. Like sometimes people are human and you can just wish them well, but you also have a child with this person, right? So, like my exes who did me wrong or did things that were horrible, I'm able to now not hold judgment. I can see them as little boys, and I can, not to say that what they did was right, but they have their own healing to do. But what I can do is have empathy and show like, wow, they had a rough childhood, or they didn't have an example, or a great mother to show them this, or I can see them as little boys.
Yeah.
And I also know like people can change.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
that's what I want people to hear.
10 years later,
Yes.
if I were to go back, I'm not going to like talk badly about the one man that was like cheating on me and like so horrible, because he could be a totally different person now. Like I'm not going to like, I don't, we
don't know. And you know what though? In reality too, he could have not changed.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's not for you.
That too. And that's not my.
Nope. That's not. And ladies, that's the thing. Like whatever it is whatever it is. And when we think about that, it really comes down to us releasing that energy. Like that's what forgiveness is about too. That's true forgiveness. Is forgiveness is understanding like that person, whatever they did or didn't do in their journey or whatever, like I'm going to release that, and that's not a reflection on me anymore. Like I don't have to hold that on anymore. Like I can, for me, forgiveness and moving on, you don't necessarily have to go and like have closure and have this conversation with that person, because sometimes that's not going to happen, and that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
But not holding on to like, oh, I can't believe he did that to me, because that would really affect you.
Yeah.
That's going to affect you and how you're going to, go about with the next person and the next relationship.
Sure.
But when you have that ability to really say, okay, you know what, there was some good, but there wasn't, but there was some bad. And I know all of us, like I said, we've have experience in relationships.
Yeah.
And I understand, like some people are like, oh, but you don't understand. I had this horrible, horrible experience. First of all, I'm sorry that you had a bad experience.
Yeah.
That's terrible. I'm sorry you had that.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that's going to define you. It doesn't mean that you're going to be your future.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you have to hold on to that.
And also
So that's beautiful that you were able to like, that's really cool, Mama.
And it also
that you were able to like.
Yeah. And just kind of like leave that. And I also think it shouldn't be the foundation for your next relationship. Like I tell Keith all the time, like I'm so grateful that I did the work, because this is what's making our relationship work. Because
Absolutely.
if I didn't, and he continues to do his own work, but if I didn't, I would be this crazy person.
Yes.
Like looking at his phone or being
trusting,
jaded by love.
Like,
and I don't have any of that.
Yeah.
Like I was able to fully open up my heart again, because I've done that work of like looking at those people from my past, forgiving, seeing them as those little babies. Like this was a baby at one point. Like that has changed my life. Like being able to like really empathize and put myself in someone else's shoes. But that has completely helped our relationship. And even times when things have come up in Keith and in my relationship where I tend to like go from 0 to 100 fairly quickly. Now, you and I are both Latina, so I'm not going to use that as an excuse. But I've been able to like sit back and like, oh, I don't want to react that way. Like I know my energy can change the environment.
Yes.
And the way that I react can change how the person who you're with, living with, or whoever you're around can also change their energy.
Yeah.
So it starts with you always.
Absolutely.
Right? And so that has been a big game changer for my current relationship. Yeah.
And how you're showing up now.
And how I show up and how I react to things.
And how you react to things.
And like red flag, like whenever like something were to happen, or if he were to say something or do something, and all of a sudden I feel myself like my adrenaline increase.
Yes.
Because again, back to chaos, I was addicted to chaos.
Yep.
I was addicted to
we talk about the body.
Yeah,
the body
that feeling
that
of
score.
it's like the familiar feeling.
Yes.
Sort of like when people continue to date people that are toxic or that are like really up and down in the relationship. And so I'll give you an example of like when it's really good, it's really good,
Yes.
but when it's bad, it's really bad.
Yeah.
And so like women, for me anyways at the time, I was addicted to the chaos of
that
the relationship.
Feeling, girlfriend, because that's
like,
what you knew.
Yeah, that's all I knew. That's all I knew.
Even though it was not healthy.
It was not healthy.
This is what I want people to hear. Like sometimes that's what it
healthy.
is. Like sometimes you wonder, like, why do we keep, attracting these type of relationships, or why are we in these relationships? Even though it's not healthy, it's a familiarity.
For sure.
It's a feeling that we've had. That's why you have to cut that feeling.
Oh yeah, cut the cord energetically. And so when Keith and I didn't have that, I thought something was wrong with the relationship.
You're probably like, what's
when
going
there
on?
was no drama, when there was no chaos, everything was just easy and even keel every day. I was like, I would create problems.
You did.
And this was early on in the relationship. And like, whoa, Felicia, like, what are you doing? Like, the chaos is not good. I actually heard Megan Fox talk about this recently. Have you heard the Megan Fox? She was on the Call Her Daddy podcast.
No, I haven't heard it.
I highly recommend that episode.
Okay, cool.
It's so good.
It's good.
I feel for her because she was so incredibly honest in the the interview.
Mm-hmm.
But she also, I could see she's addicted to chaos still.
Got it.
Obviously in her relationship with Machine Gun Kelly, and she almost like she still wants to date that kind of guy.
Got it.
You know? And
yeah.
it's almost like she needs that chaos, and she's still in it. You know?
She's still in it,
so
yeah.
like I feel for that, and if that's her journey. But I know for me that chaos had to stop.
It had to stop.
And it was not good for me. And also like just because, you know, the chaos doesn't mean that things are good. Kind of like when we're in survival mode or when things are really hard. Like, again, the Olympics is a perfect example of that. Look at the women's gymnastics. It is completely shifted from when Bella and Marta Caroli owned it in the coaches. And so like before it was suffering, it was hard. You had to work so hard.
and
mental health was pushed aside.
No.
And like you had to basically, in order to be a good athlete, you had to suffer.
Right.
Well, what if we change that?
Right.
What if in order to be a good athlete, you had to have really strong mental health and be taken care of and have good sleep?
Yes.
Same thing in life.
Yes.
Like, you don't have to be suffering, and it doesn't have to be in order to like change. You can choose to change in a good environment.
Absolutely.
You can choose to change without all the suffering. And it took me years to finally realize
to kind of feel that.
But yeah, I was so addicted to chaos. And so like when Keith and I were just like even keel, I was like, something's wrong with us. Like,
Something's
what's wrong?
you're like wrong. Well, because this is the deal. And I believe this with all my heart. Relationships truly should be a place that like enhances your life. And a great relationship, people are like, what? I'm going to say this right now. I know people are like, huh? Let me tell you what a great relationship is. A great relationship, it should feel easy.
Yeah.
Easy like Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that you're not going to have issues.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean there's something perfect. But that's when you know that you are in the right relationship, because the chaos and all of that stuff is just past stuff.
Yeah.
It's not a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
And so when we can get there as women and realize that that's what relationships are all about. It's like kind of like what you said earlier. It's truly like a place that you kind of find home. It's a comfort. It's you know, the world is hard. To me, I'm like, oh, the world is hard. But a relationship should be where you feel that peace and that comfort, and you're literally married to your best friend. Your best friend lover.
Yeah.
Like your best friend lover. Women that are listening to this right now and they're like, oh my goodness. You know what I mean? They're like, wow, I see myself in her. And like I said earlier, you know, I deal with a lot of women that are in their 30s and they haven't really found their match yet. And they don't even know if it's possible at this point. They're like, I don't know, girl.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm getting too old, or maybe because of my other relationships. What advice would you give them?
Ooh, well, I would say that is a limiting belief, the age thing. Okay. So limiting belief. So like let go of that, because you can find literally your life can change tomorrow. Okay. Like literally you could meet someone at the grocery store. Like you could hear some sort of like life-changing opportunity could happen. So miracles happen all the time, number one. Okay. And so we have to be open for miracles and for whatever that looks like for you. So that I do believe that's a limiting belief. Okay. And then number two, it's going to be a harsh truth. Maybe not harsh.
Okay, let's hear it.
Girlfriend, you got to get out there.
Gotta get out there. Ooh, I love it.
You got to get out there. Like what I find, especially with some of my friends who are single, maybe they're in their 40s or they're single and they're wanting, they're like, you know, oh, I haven't met the guy. I was like, well, have you went out to go like,
he ain't gonna knock on the door.
Date? And they're like, no, I'm just at home. Like, well, where do you want to meet these people?
Yes.
You're gonna have to go out there and like meet people and have conversations. And so like, maybe this is what you need to hear right now, but like go out with your friends, get on a really cute dress, whatever that may be. And like, just go out and meet people, go out and do new things.
Yes.
Go out and experience new things. You never know who you might meet. And I mean, it could happen. So yeah.
Oh, I love that. Like put yourself out there.
Put yourself out there.
And
they're
don't
not going
think
to
you're
meet
too
you while you're at
old,
home.
mama. No.
No.
Put yourself out there. Get out there. Meet new people.
Do something new this week.
Yeah.
Go to, you know, whatever it is, like I know I have a good, her name's Louisa. And she's like going to like optimize and doing cold plunges. She'll go to Lifetime Fitness. Like, she's going to places where there's men and where there's people that she could meet, you know, because you never know. And you have to do those things because again, it's not going to come at your door.
Like knocking on the door.
Yeah.
Yes, you got to put
Unless
your,
it's like a FedEx guy or something.
I know. Well, you know, but you have to put yourself out there. You have to have intentions. Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So, yeah. So that's going to be my advice for you today is like, go do something different.
Go do something different. Okay, so let me ask you this. How do people get in your world and what do you do for a living now? Because you are a firecracker. Like you, wow.
So this is such a hard question. No, I am very multi-passionate. So I owned gyms for years. So when I sold my last gym in 2017, 2018, I went online and I built my fitness business. So I don't do the fitness business anymore. So I don't help like the person lose weight or anything like that. But I do have a corporate wellness business.
Okay.
So, and I do fitness consulting, and I also do mentorship and business coaching for online coaches who want to show up online. They want to be seen. They want to build passive income, residual income. So I host masterminds, workshops, retreats. I do live podcast events.
I need her in my life.
They're a lot of fun. But yeah, basically a mentor for women who, and really just being an example and to show them what's possible, because I do believe when you are running with women that are expanders for you, then you are going to expand. And that's what I want to be for other women.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How do they get a hold of you?
They can go to my website, so FeliciaRomero.com, and I hang out over on Instagram. Okay. So
what's
just
your handle?
My name, at Felicia Romero, my first and last name. I have a ton of like free stuff there. I have some live upcoming events coming up. I don't know when this will drop, but I have some workshops, some live events. I have this really awesome retreat happening in November called the 6-Figure Circle. So it is for women who are currently making 6 figures in their business or like on the cusp of making 6 figures. So not necessarily a newbie who hasn't even made their first like 10K month, mainly because it's a little bit more like expansive conversation in terms of like what we're dealing with.
And how we can take it to the next level.
Yes, absolutely. So it's a retreat, very much an embodiment of the feminine and the masculine. So it's a good intertwining of the both energies for the Friday and Saturday. And I do it at my house.
Oh, because you are in...
I'm in North Mesa.
North Mesa.
Yeah. Okay. And so when Keith and I manifested the house, I remember telling him, oh man, I really want a house and with like a lot of space. Okay. And where I can like have events and do different things at the house, host different things. And we did it.
Well, so, you said earlier, Mama, you said you're like you're kind of a homebody too. Yes. You know what I mean? So like that to me is like perfect alignment with you.
Yes.
Yeah. You're like, okay, I'm going to have it. You guys follow her. Isn't she amazing? Like seriously. Wow. No, this has been like, I cannot believe how long we were. It just went so fast.
Oh, wow.
No, seriously. This is fantastic. Yeah. What are you and your man looking forward to right now?
Ooh, what we're looking, actually, we're dreaming of our next investment property.
Ooh.
So we're looking at homes in Sedona. So we're going to turn it into a retreat house / Airbnb / like summer getaway. So so that's kind of our next thing. So we've been looking.
You guys been looking.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So how is life with you and him?
Life is good. Not that we don't have obviously our problems, but honestly we're on the same page with a lot of things, and we're always thinking about the legacy and the future that we want to build, and also creating fun experiences for Rylan, his son, who I'm kind of like a bonus second mom to, because I've been in his life since he was 2. So he's 9 now. So that's been a lot of fun to see him grow. We actually just got one of those Polaris, like the 4-wheel little that we're going to actually. So I'm a big believer in manifestation.
Okay. Yeah.
So we bought this knowing that we don't have a Sedona home yet, but we bought it for a Sedona home.
Perfect.
So we like to do things that set us up for manifesting the big thing that we want. So for instance, when we built our house, I put in a Tesla charger.
Okay.
I didn't have a Tesla.
You didn't have one?
No,
but
like,
I wanted one. Get one.
Yeah. And so we built our house with a Tesla charger.
Oh my goodness.
Didn't have one, but I knew that I wanted one. And that is like how I tend to manifest.
Yes.
Because I do things that are actually like taking me in that direction. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
My goodness, Mama, you're incredible. This has been phenomenal.
This was so fun.
No, thank you so much. You know, and I'm going to leave you before, and I want to cheers to something, but before we wrap this up really quick, is there anything else that's on your heart that you would like to say for, people that are listening, for the women out there? I know I know you told those single ones, get out there.
Yeah.
Definitely put yourself out there.
Yeah. I don't necessarily have anything on my heart, but if I were to say anything, I would say just let go of the expectation. I think expectations of how you think your life should look will actually make you feel that like you haven't done anything, right?
that.
And so really like take a moment to look at how far you've come and have an immense amount of appreciation and gratitude for how far you've come, because I can imagine if you were to do that, you probably have come a long way.
Yeah.
And so like if we continue to focus on, or you continue to focus on what you don't have or what your life should look like or that you should be here or further along, it only continues to make you feel less than.
Oh, I love that.
Appreciate how far you've come.
Oh, I love it. Oh my goodness. Okay, hold on, girlfriend. Here you go. We're going to cheers here. This has been amazing.
Yes.
Hold on. Let me give you some. See if I can grab this. Okay. Here we go. Okay, you got some for you. But don't spill it. Oh, look, I did so good. Okay. Oh, I did it. Okay. All right. So, cheers.
Cheers.
To great love.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's a wrap. Wow. What an incredible conversation I had with Felicia, a very successful woman who has been able to create financial success in her life, but realized that there was more healing and more inner work that she needed to do. And because she did the work, she was ready and available when her soulmate came back into her life. This time, she was ready to be open to him. This time was the perfect time because she was different. Wow. What a beautiful love story. If you're loving these podcasts and these incredible conversations, please hit the subscribe button and leave a 5-star review. Don't miss an episode, because each week I'll be bringing on guests and experts who will share their knowledge about love, dating, and relationships so you can apply it into your own life. I'll see you next week. And until then, cheers to great love.